Chinese menu in his hand.
The views and opinions expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the view of Wolfpack Research or any of its officers. The views and opinions expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on this program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. We are not investment advisors. We hold no registrations with the SEC, FINRA, or any other regulatory agency, and none of the opinions expressed on this podcast should be considered investment advice. The listener should assume that we have positions in and stand to benefit from any stock or other security mentioned on this podcast. Do your own research before making investment decisions.
Welcome to the Wolf Den, everybody. This is Dan David coming at you with the pack, and by pack I mean, Sound Carl. He's back. You can't get rid of him.
I'm like,
yeah, well said, well spoken, Carl. I appreciate that. That was you really putting it together, putting it down. We also have Andrew with us, who's new to the pack, and welcome, Andrew. Well said on your part too.
Yeah, great to be here.
Carl's going to have his crayons out taking some notes. He needs to, because our special guest is a YouTube influencer and sensation, and someone who specializes in shining a light on the bullshit propaganda in the CCP. My favorite subject, as you all know. He is, been described as Voldemort in China by the CCP. I think that's a pejorative if you're a wizard. And his content is banned in China, much like my physical presence. I'm sure his is too. This is Laowhy86. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Thank you very much, Dan. Appreciate you having me on.
Follow him on his YouTube channel at Laowhy86. Matt has nearly 2 million subscribers on 4 channels, tens of millions of views in his videos. He lived in China for 10 years. He and his friend SerpentZA. You guys just have the coolest names. SerpentZA was the first China YouTuber, and Laowhy86 was the second. So you've got 1 and 2 there. Then they teamed up and started doing a YouTube channel in China after they set up a custom motorcycle shop. Very cool, Carl, right?
That is very cool.
I know you love your motorcycles.
Yes, although I'm curious about custom motorcycles in China. I can't imagine they're...
Oh, you watch the videos. You'll see. It's the really cool trips they take. Laowhy86 and SerpentZA created 2 shows called Conquering Southern China and Conquering, Northern China, because, they already did the South.
It covers the whole thing.
Yeah, it's North and South. But saw a huge change in happening under the leadership of, you guessed it, Whinny the Xi Jing Ping. Predictably, China came after them and they were forced to leave or face off with the government, which is, I think Matt will get into this, a very tough thing because he built a family there. And now they focus, rightfully so, on human rights atrocities committed by the CCP and bringing awareness to the rest of the world about Chinese government's true ambitions. Matt, very, very cool. I'm just going to take a wild guess at this. You fell into this. This was not your life plan.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. I mean, like the whole China thing, I think it's rare that I can talk to somebody like yourself that actually has experience with China, especially with the idea that you're going into it with a positive mentality, going into it with the idea that there's going to be some, not just fortune to be made, but also just opportunity in general. When I was in China in the beginning, again, I was just setting up my life like you would. One contract led to another, and I just kept picking up jobs and eventually getting married and having kids and stuff and running my own businesses, like you said. And you never expect to want to go into a country and be like, I'm going to be the forefront of the critique against the government of this country. Of course, you don't go into that thinking that with that preconceived notion. So when we were filming our TV shows, like you mentioned, we noticed that like in the beginning, as a foreigner with a camera, people were very receptive to you. You could see China opening up. You could see like, and not just financially, just like people in general saying, you know what? We used to be closed off, and the past leader, Deng Xiaoping, said that we're going to open up to the rest of the world. And it actually was happening.
Yeah.
The problem with that was that there was a framework that was always there. There was always the framework of the Chinese Communist Party to say that when needed, we can crack down and close everything off again to maintain social stability. And that is really just the kind of paramount of how the Chinese leadership works. It's social stability above everything else. And so what they saw was that if there was any sort of discourse within China amongst the populace that was pointing fingers at the government, it had to have come from outside influence. So this is always what happens, is that when China perceives an outside threat, they turned to xenophobia and nationalism to kind of promote the social stability and say that every discomfort that you're experiencing, whether it be a downturn in the economy or, lack of healthcare or terrible education system, whatever, all this stuff is America's fault. We saw that kind of happen under Xi Jing Ping. I think, to be honest with you, like the Whinny the Poo reference that you made was hilarious, by the way. But when you look at like Chinese leadership in general, when we saw Xi Jinping coming into power, the majority of us were actually kind of excited because we were like, this is the next step of liberalization. Mm-hmm. Like, this is actually going to liberalize China even more.
He went to school in Iowa, for Pete's sake. I mean, like, corn-fed.
Dude, his name's Ryan.
Yeah.
He literally he's called Ryan.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about approachable, right? Like, you got Hu Jintao, you got Deng Xiaoping. I speak Chinese, so it's a different story, but the average person is not going to go around being like, oh, I really miss Hu Jintao, right? That name doesn't roll off the tongue.
No, but you could miss a Ryan.
Ryan?
Yeah.
Sure, we all know Ryan.
Oh, definitely. One of my best friends named Ryan.
Ryan comes into power and people are super pumped. They're like, he seems like a pretty forward-thinking dude, but it turns out he's just a CCP princeling. And he really just worships power more than anything else. So what I get this impression that a lot of Xi Jinping's policies stem from him not understanding how things work. And I think there's an argument to be made at just like how incompetent he actually is in his leadership. So like when Xi Jinping doesn't understand a certain sector, let's say robotics or something, then he won't pay attention to it or won't focus on it and focus on something else, because to him, consolidation of power is much more important than the actual, future of the country. So a lot of talent's being stifled, massive brain drain.
And he consolidated power like faster than anybody in history.
Yeah.
I mean,
right.
Generally, you don't have maybe full control of the military until your second term.
Yeah.
And he had it within a year or two, right? I mean, that was something like even you in China, you're like, okay, that's a little weird, right? I mean, I remember my team being over there saying, this is something different going on here.
Yeah.
What was it like in China? What were they saying when that was happening?
Yeah. So the symptoms came through, for someone that wasn't really interested in politics at the time, the symptoms came through when you saw the banners go up. When you saw, when I first got there, the hammer and sickles, they were taking them down. The red banners, they were taking those down, and you were seeing everything be replaced with like new startups and people like opening up little businesses and shops and stuff. Right. Then all of a sudden the billboards go up with Xi Jinping clapping as you're on like a dirt road where there's people walking around holding rats and stuff. There's like a Xi Jinping like clapping over the road, It's like, that was bad vibes. Like by and large, it's bad vibes compared to when I first got there. So
yeah, when his picture starts going up everywhere, 50 feet tall.
Right.
By the way, that's never a good sign in any country.
No.
Little North Korea like.
North Korea vibes, Turkmenistan vibes,
Yeah, all of that. And then, here you are, this guy that's just like, I want to go to China and experience, this country just growing up. And it's not like you didn't see what you would expect in China, fake knockoff, Gucci bags. And, all that stuff, but it was tongue in cheek. Nobody was kind of trying to hide it, really. No. I mean, they knew it was, and you knew it was, right? When you're on the street buying it.
Yeah.
And they appreciated Westerners coming in.
Right.
And then not so much. About the time the banners are going up.
Yeah, for sure. And that's exactly when we noticed when we were going around filming. We had like a tiny film crew doing everything under the radar and stuff, just focusing completely on positive interactions with people around China, because we're tired of the government narrative is to go around to a city center and have like a full-on CCP entourage to introduce something like overly produced bullshit to everybody. And we were out there riding our motorcycles around China for thousands of kilometers, meeting these really cool people with great stories. And we're like, why not put our own stuff out there that we produce ourselves? It'll be real. And they just didn't want to see it. It didn't matter. Like, it wasn't that anything was negative. It was a fully clean, very nice, positive picture of China that it was our love letter to the country. But at the same time, it wasn't the image that the CCP wanted the rest of the world to see. It wasn't an expose. It wasn't like, look at this dirty factory.
But they allowed you to do it for a while, right?
Yeah, they did. And I think that was a hangover from that liberalization period, right? It was a hangover from maybe like this gray zone of how China operates is kind of what made its success, right?
No, yeah. I mean, look, I watch your videos like the beginning when you guys first started as these influencers, and you can just see the arc, right? And what surprised me as we're sitting here now in 2022, or when I started watching them maybe in the last year, is like you didn't have minders.
No.
People were very open. People generally, when you get out in the country, are pretty open anyway, or used to be. That's how we could find fraud in these factories, because they'd just be like, yeah, no, there's only 10 people that work there, not 10,000. And then that changes, right? I mean, first of all, you riding a motorcycle became a problem. Yeah. Didn't they like outlaw those at some point?
Yeah, and in major cities, because they said, the government said it made the country look poor, made it look bad, right? So you had to remove motorcycles from the equation because only cars are the future. And, this idea that the Chinese government has is that everyone in America doesn't like two-wheel transport because they have enough money to buy a car. So it's just ridiculous ideology, right?
That's crazy. Yeah. And it really hurts somebody's motorcycle business, I imagine.
Well, you can imagine, right? Yeah.
It's a good thing you can juggle.
Yeah. I mean, we were pushed to the outskirts of the city and just to operate, right? And yeah, for us to like be able to like film on motorcycles was crazy. In some of these areas, you'd even go to some rural areas that had adhered to this kind of government ban and be chased out of the city, or, get your bike threatened to take, or have to bribe the cops to get it back. But really when it came to a head was when we were filming Conquering Northern China, and we were just filming some camels. And then we went to this farm where they make horse milk alcohol.
Horse milk alcohol.
Yeah. So you milk a horse, and don't get any ideas. They have milk glands and udders just like a cow,
Yeah. Okay.
Not that kind of horse milk, milking, unfortunately.
Yeah.
At least I don't think so.
Oh,
anyway, what they do is they ferment it, right? Mongolian people do this, by the way.
Yeah.
So there's a bunch of Mongolians in northern China, and they ferment this milk and they turn it into this kind of spirit, right? This alcohol. What's crazy is it actually tastes kind of like strawberries, weirdly enough.
What?
Yeah. It tastes just like horse jizz.
You wouldn't believe it.
You wouldn't believe how similar.
They don't hide the jizz taste at all.
In a strawberry kind of way.
Yeah.
All right, fair enough.
Anyway, in reality though, it's I mean, I wouldn't go out of my way to drink it. My point is it was completely innocent. It was actually really romantic. It was really nice. We were riding our motorcycles with these Mongolian herders out on their horses. We're on our bikes.
I bet that's really cool.
Yeah, we were chasing the horses around, getting them into the pens and stuff. And actually, you put a very funny image in my head. Like a couple of these guys had absolutely no sense of humor, because there's like nomads living out in the middle of nowhere. There's no like sarcasm. Right. They didn't watch Seinfeld, right, or something like this. Right. This one guy was. I mean, the way he was milking this horse was very suggestive. And both my buddy Winston and I, we were just trying so hard to be respectful and stifle our laughter and just turn around.
Right, because he's all business when he's jerking this horse off, right? Like, I mean, he's just like...
Oh, yeah. Right. And he's wearing his like traditional outfit, right? And he turns around and he looked like he was going to fucking kill us. And he had like a sword. Right.
Oh, well.
So we were like, let's stop the laughter.
That's for the uncooperative horse.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, long story short, this is right on the Mongolian border. So this is just one of the instances that kind of made us realize that we need to get the hell out of there. But when we stayed at this hotel, the SWAT team came in and interrogated us.
What does an inner Mongolian SWAT team look like? I mean, were they also riding horses and camels and stuff? No. Okay.
So for context for your audience, Inner Mongolia is just a province of China that happens to have a lot of Mongolian people there. So the SWAT team was, there were Han Chinese people, there were Mongolians, but they're all in China. It's just part of China. They're wearing Chinese SWAT team outfits with their weapons and body cams and stuff. And they had
like real SWAT.
Yeah. They had real detectives, I presume from Beijing over there, and they knew everything about us. They knew where I shop. Wow. They knew which contracts I had for my jobs. They knew everything. I'm thousands of miles away from home where I live in China. They know everything about me. And they interrogated us, and they were 100% convinced that we were these guys that they had been warned about, these guys that make YouTube videos. We were, by the way. But what they presumed
it was us
was that we were there to go make some huge expose on why Mongolians don't want to be a part of China, which is absolutely not. We had we didn't even know where we were really, right?
Right.
We weren't there to break some story.
We're just here to milk the horses.
Yeah, we're there to milk horses like, normal people do.
How does one get out of that? Because it's at least half true. You are the YouTube guy, so...
But we weren't doing anything wrong, right?
Right, but so how do you get out of the other half of it?
They get this memo, obviously, that these guys are out there making unlicensed videos without a journalist license or something like this. And they're like, okay, there's probably enough, what's it called, telephone game going around that, okay, they're going to end up doing something bad. They're going to end up breaking some massive story. And it turns out that's actually true. We didn't know anything about it, but the Uyghurs in Western China that are currently being genocided, that story was broken by a journalist, right? People figuring this out and chasing up stories and whatnot. And it turns out there's huge dissent in Inner Mongolia amongst the Mongolian people that don't want to be a part of China, right? There's a huge amount of dissent, but it's just not been talked about yet. So here they are thinking that we're going to take some massive opportunity to go film all this kind of stuff. And we realized that, really, to sum it up, there's so much to talk about there, but to sum it up is that's when we knew there was so much paranoia going around China that it wasn't feasible. And really, when it came to a head was when our buddy Michael Spavor, which was one of the Canadian Michaels that was illegally detained in China and during the whole Huawei Meng Wanzhou scandal. When that happened, it was just like very obvious to us. And I had a very narrow escape from China, but people can go check that out. But really, it just made so much sense to us that the writing's on the wall. China's given us so many signals that it doesn't want foreigners here anymore, especially foreigners with cameras talking about things, that it just made sense to get out. And really, what we were able to do when we left was start talking about a lot of the things that we felt morally responsible to talk about, but couldn't while we were in China.
So you got away from the SWAT team, and then I guess the PLA showed up at one point too, right? It wasn't just
we were
the Army.
The PLA took all our gear apart. They were like, kept grilling us, like, why are you filming here? We're like, we're at that point, we're filming camels. They didn't believe us. We were just basically pestered the entire way, but it wasn't like, okay, it's an authoritarian government. They just don't want us filming here and let's just move along. It was like pestered until I left China, basically after that. Yeah, cops showing up at my house and whatnot.
It's a weird dynamic. Like you can't be, apparently, as you point out in some of your videos, in a very matter of fact way, you can't be pro-China and pro-US. Like no. you started out teaching English, as your first kind of job in business as an entrepreneur before you're making motorcycles. And you couldn't even have an American flag next to a Chinese flag, which would symbolize cooperation. Yeah. You can't do that, right?
No. Well, you especially can't do that if you are not doing it the way they want you to. So there is a certain type of branded propaganda that China puts out that's like all about cooperation and the striking the balance. But what you'll see, there's actually an influencer out there that fills a specific role of being I'm the bridge between China and America, right? But actually,
we call that a white monkey.
Yeah, sure. It's a white monkey job, right? But what that actually is I'm pro-America and pro-China if we take China's side every single time, right?
Right. Yeah. I'm pro-America and pro-China when America and China agree.
Right.
When they disagree, I'm pro-China.
That's absolutely correct. Right.
Yeah, I watched your white monkey influencers episode. I really think, and these are great bite-sized episodes, right? So they're not way too long like my podcast. And man, the amount of time you must have spent to get 15 or 20 minutes or whatever and show these guys and girls and how they're just propagandists paid off. And from tier 1, 2, and 3 of like, this is just an idiot who thought he was taking a free trip and gets a free trip. But now he's like, throwing carrots up in the air like a juggler for the CCP in a video, to really a spy and should be branded as state media. Mm-hmm. It's a fantastic episode. And that's exactly what they are. They're white monkeys.
Yeah. I mean, thanks for pointing that out. I did 3 white monkey job videos to highlight the innocence of the beginning. Like when you go to China and you're just, I'm a foreigner, I can sell underwear. I can sell whatever. Whatever. Like they want to use a foreigner to give credence to a product that starts innocent. But yeah, right now, the prime objective for China to use foreigners is for propaganda. So they really do groom people, like you said. They groom people in that, like, we'll give you a free trip, and then eventually you're like standing on a dam that's about to burst, and they're like, yeah, there's no problems here. They're like, we'll let you stay at this beach resort in Hainan, and then next thing you know, you're standing in front of a concentration camp in Xinjiang saying that there's nothing going on there. So it's very like evil what they're doing, and it's to me incredibly unfair that YouTube can label state media as such. So for example, like CGTN is Chinese state media. It'll say these things, but these amplifier channels, these paid white monkeys, they're not labeled as such. So the average person out there maybe just won't know that they're reading a script and taking information from an authoritarian government to promote its country and to, demonize the West. And I think that it's unfair to the casual viewer that they don't see that label.
No, it's crazy. There's like you point out this Wow Girl, I guess, who's had several, and I guess that's her handle now, Wow Girl, because
Miss Wow,
the first 3 incarnations of her stunk.
Yeah.
or you had pointed out, like, some of these people you just flat out call out enough to where their channel goes away.
Yeah.
You and SerpentZA or whoever do that personally. That's a direct cause and effect, and thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks for acknowledging it.
Yeah, but like this Wild Girl doesn't get a state media stamp, which is ridiculous because, as you point out, and as happens, like she'll say, "Oh, China, we're so great at accepting the LGBTQ community here in China," which is absolutely untrue. It's like the last place you want to be gay,
right?
But what they play here on video is that it's a great place for them to be gay. Meanwhile, they're not accepting foreigners anyway. So, so they can just say that.
That's actually a really good point, is that during the huge hubbub about the Xinjiang Uyghur genocide scenario, they were saying, as part of their propaganda campaign, you can just go get on a plane and come over here and see for yourself. When China's been completely closed off, you can't come there as a tourist. And if you were somehow managed to had managed to teleport there, you'd have like 10 minders around you, which we've proven.
Right.
In some of these guys' videos, we actually spotted the minders following them around, which they're very upset about.
Even their white monkeys get 7 minders.
Yeah. So you can imagine what a tourist would get.
We had Ambassador Shea on last year, and he talked about he's a government official, and they had dozens of minders around them.
You expect that as a government official. I mean, I don't think you expect it when you're going to as a tourist to a resort town, or if you just wanted to see Xinjiang. I mean, to
Forbidden City.
But you will get a minder, and as Laowhy pointed out in his video, even I forget what this particular white monkey's name was, but he definitely was one. But he's just like a little arrows going down. Minder number 1, minder number 2, minder number 3. And they're all walking around so inconspicuously. Like, I mean, they might as well have something on their forehead that says minder.
Yeah. That's actually a really good example of domestic propaganda. So it's to get the white monkey to confirm what the government tells its own citizens, right? That there's no genocide and stuff. Nate, it's a dual-pronged approach, which I pointed out, is that they found out later that they can use these white monkeys to convince their populace of what they want to brainwash them with. But then I'll also simultaneously put it out there on YouTube, which is blocked in China, for other Westerners to see, right? To say, well, this Laowhy86 guy and SerpentZA guy, they must be full of shit because they're not in China anymore. And these guys are on the ground, right? They're actually walking around showing the truth. And that's really what the approach of the Chinese government is. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you're not allowed to see YouTube in China, but you can export YouTube from China
if it's propaganda.
If it's propaganda. That's exactly right. And I mean, I guess this is sad for you because like you went there, you get married, you have a family.
Sure.
And then you buy a home.
Yeah.
You own, well, I mean, lease property for 99 years or whatever shit they pull over there.
Yeah.
And you have to leave. One of the reasons you stayed that just kind of shocked me is just like, listen, it got so uncomfortable around here. And then there was the kidnappings at the park, and I've got a 2-year-old.
Right.
Is that really happening?
Yeah.
They're just like kidnapping 2-year-olds?
I mean, there's a reason that the government actually allowed a website to be set up because it was so bad and causing so much public unrest. It's called 宝贝回家, which means like baby come home. Because kidnapping and human trafficking is so prevalent. Now, the Chinese government will never admit that it's a problem, but at least they allowed like a public forum for people to post pictures of their kids that were kidnapped. But yeah, just in the park right next to my house, there were 5 kidnappings in a very short span of time. And
Jesus,
it's what they do is they would get the human traffickers pull up like a van, like a really shitty, it's called a bread box van in China. It's this kind of
a
like
white van.
It's silverish.
No, it's a bread box van. Yeah.
The white van's the kidnap van here.
Yeah. Yeah. Think of a smaller version of that. But they pull it up and there'll be like a grandma and grandfather looking couple will come out and they'll have a dirty kidnapped child that they've already, groomed. And they'll say, go and lure these kids over here. So the kids will go and try to find friends in the park. There's like, China's people everywhere, right? So it's a lot of commotion, a lot of noise, people dancing, people singing or whatever. And the kids will go and lure the the other kids over to the van, which, where they'll get snatched. And what happens is the young boys will be sold to couples in the countryside that wanted to have a boy but couldn't have a boy because males are preferred, and the girls will oftentimes be sold into the sex trade. So it's one of those horrific things that you couldn't even fathom, but it's just so prevalent and widespread that it's like, that was one of those things that burned our souls. Like, we have to talk about this, right? So we waited till we left, but it was one of those things that why would I raise my child in a scenario like this? Right.
I mean, look, it's just, China's not 1.4 billion evil people.
No.
And you make that point over and over again.
Yeah.
That you're one of the people.
Yeah.
Like they're one of us. It's just the governments. But, having said that, wouldn't that be the last place in a surveillance state where you would try to set up kidnapping children? I mean, what happens when these people get caught? I imagine there's a 5-minute trial and they're shot in the head.
You would hope so. And here's the issue. The reason that, China gets lauded as being able to do grand projects very quickly and very successfully, right? Oh,
yeah, well, they're shams and shambles and they fall apart.
Right. You're the right person to talk to about this. The issue with that is that even if you use that kind of false image of how amazing authoritarian states are at doing things so quickly and successfully, that all falls apart when you actually look at why the government doesn't focus on stopping human trafficking, because technically it could, at least from a propaganda perspective.
Yeah.
The reason is that they're complicit. The human trafficking goes so deep, and I'm not trying to be like tinfoil hat over here, but there are so many local officials that rely on some element of trafficking, or at least the traffickers in general, to generate income or to consolidate power in their area, or, just in general, having connections in Guangxi, like with people that are in that business, that are influential in their politics, that they can't stop it. They're part of it.
It's that big. It's that big.
Of course, absolutely. I'm not talking about some people in Zhongnanhai in Beijing sitting there in the equivalent of the Oval Office talking about which kids to kidnap next. But I'm talking about when you have it systematically going down through the provincial governments, the towns. Well, a great example is when I was in Guizhou. I was in this little town, poorest province in China at the time. We were off-road. You have to go off-road to go into this town, and there's like people, like malnourished people riding like donkey carts and stuff on this off-road. Not like the image of China you'd see in the propaganda. And you get in the village and you talk to the people, and they tell you a story about how their local official was caught raping and murdering a 14-year-old girl. Body was found in the river. People freaked out. They stifled all the protesters, ruined all their lives, right? Completely, like, got them unemployed.
The protesters.
Yeah. And the guy is still in power, right? So you're just this dude that shows up on a motorcycle eating some sausage with these dudes in this foggy little town in the middle of nowhere. And that's the first thing they want to tell you about, because they can't do anything about it, right? So it's very systematic, and that's the problem.
Yeah, and you guys weren't even filming that shit.
No. I mean, that's one anecdote of many, many hundreds of stories that we've come across throughout the country, is that people tend to vent when they think, oh, this guy's from outside, he's going to leave anyway. He speaks Chinese, and like, let me tell him about what's going on,
No, the average Chinese citizen, does really, I mean, it's way different than doing on the ground investigations in Japan.
Yeah.
Where, I mean, Japan, you could eat off a 7-Eleven floor.
Yeah.
I mean, everything's so clean and so proper. But if you ask somebody a question that is clearly none of their business or none of your business, they will clearly tell you it's none of your business or their business.
Yeah.
In China, they'll just, they'll have a conversation with you. Yeah, no, my brother works at this factory, and this is how many people are there. And, oh, no, this is complete bullshit. This is a lie to steal money from Westerners.
Sure.
They'll just say it. Having said that, my job's gotten very, very hard in the last few years, because I asked you the question about the surveillance state, and you answered it about why these people aren't just going to jail. Because any one of my investigators that is maybe just standing outside a facility anymore with a mask on, they'll know who they are in like 10 minutes. They'll have cameras follow this person back to wherever they take their mask off, and then they're arrested for nothing, because there is no public property, right? It's all government-owned property.
Right.
If they really wanted to stop the human trafficking, they could.
Yeah.
So your answer is I'm sure absolutely valid, that this just permeates up the ladder.
Yeah.
And people have to keep in mind that a mayor of a town is a very powerful person. A provincial leader is extremely powerful. They're not some schmuck that won a popularity contest in high school.
No.
I mean, they're appointed by the CCP and shipped in, from parts unknown, right? They don't have to grow up in Shanghai to run Shanghai.
I'm so happy you said that, because like you go to a place where the people just don't have money. It's very rundown, and there will be this palatial, penthouse suite where the mayor is living. They're like, how does the mayor have so much money? You find out his kid's going to school in California. He's got property in Long Island, right? And it's like, no one in this town makes more than, a couple $100 a month.
Right.
What is this guy doing that's supposed to be making, the equivalent of $1,000 a month from the government salary? Why is he wearing 6 gold watches?
It's connected.
It is, a lot like Cosa Nostra on steroids. I mean, this guy's basically a capo, and his promotion is to go to a bigger town to steal from.
Yeah.
That's how it goes. That's how they're promoted, to a bigger opportunity of oppressing people.
Yeah. One thing I do want to throw in there is that I want people to understand why this happens. And that is because a lot of people get lost in this idea that Xi Jing Ping was the forefather, the father of anti-corruption drives. And that was kind of how he came into power, is that, yes, finally China is acknowledging with a bit of transparency that there's a corruption problem. And Xi Jinping is going to be the guy that gets rid of it. And what he actually...
It just happened to be none of his friends.
That's exactly what it was. And in fact, it's more corrupt now. And it's just that his cronies are in power in all these different places, and that they get to do whatever they want with impunity because they've already passed the anti-corruption test, right?
Right. Well, the loyalty test to Xi Jinping.
Yeah.
I think the guy who came in second place for power with Xi Jinping was the first guy he took out.
Yes, exactly.
It really was. His Bao, what was it? I forget his name. Bo Xilai, yeah. Bo Xilai was, hey, congratulations. In Glengarry Glen Ross, you got a set of steak knives for second place. Cadillac was first place, set of steak knives, second place, third place, you're fucking fired.
Yeah.
Bo Xilai, he's gone, right? He's just gone.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's second
He's on
place.
vacation.
Yeah.
I think his wife is gone too.
Yes.
Yeah. I actually got them both. So, and if you're a foreigner, like what started there that wasn't the case is people hear about this social credit scoring for citizens in China. Like, you can't move up societally without having this. And this has been within the last 10 years, everybody. Like, we've all lived through this without knowing we lived through it.
Yeah.
But they also have this for foreigners, like an ABC system that would allow you to travel, not travel, and things of that nature, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like a rudimentary social credit system, but you don't get as much detail thrown in there because you're just a lowly foreigner, But yeah, they tried this whole grading foreigner system. So if you want to get employment in China, you're either like a low level C tier, a B tier, maybe as like a foreign expert, someone that teaches, right? And then an A tier would be like an engineer and stuff like that. I'll be honest with you though, I don't think that ever ended up taking off properly. And there's no incentive for it to take off anymore because no one's going to China. I'm speaking in generalities, but it's not that those days are over.
The coronavirus has screwed that up too. And respectful of your time, but
sure.
I've got to talk to you about what's going on there because you and I are both seeing the same things.
Yeah.
And, I'm really tired of our media on both sides.
Sure.
Not properly. I mean, they should, not just the coronavirus, but the issue in Ukraine. They should absolutely show what the media in China is saying about the United States and Western powers.
Yeah.
And how they just shit all over us every day about supporting Nazis as they absolutely prop up Russia. The war in Ukraine could be over tomorrow.
Yes.
And then the detention camps with Uyghur Muslims, sure. But they have detention camps now for coronavirus. They set up these not just makeshift hospitals, but makeshift detention camps for anyone who gets a virus. They just throw you in a kind of prison.
Yep, that's absolutely correct. So if you're talking about what's happening in Shanghai right now, the only reason you're actually hearing about anything happening in Shanghai right now is because people in Shanghai tend to be more worldly in general.
And tech savvy.
This stuff has been happening all over China, especially in northern China, northeastern China, where I've been talking to people for the past few months. And there's been tons of cases where people are getting locked up for over 100 days in some of these quarantine facilities. And you're just hearing about it, like I said, in Shanghai, because there's so many foreigners there. People are used to accessing the outside world. But if you're going to talk about the Russia thing, I think that is one of the things that makes me the most angry of anything that China's been doing recently. And that's because the absolute blatant hypocrisy is not being addressed properly on mainstream media. And it's very important that it does, because what I see is the odd article coming out, I can't name publications specifically, but it'll say China could be the great mediator in this situation. China could be the reason that, that peace could be achieved. Yeah, that's great, but they're not acknowledging the fact that they fully put all of their support behind Putin.
Yeah, right.
It's not a joke. Like, it's all behind there. There's every single trade has been opened up, and it's duly advantageous for both of them. And that is not being addressed. While all of the netizens are being taught, or I should say Chinese citizens in general, are being taught that Ukrainians are subhuman and being fed Russian propaganda, and that the West is the reason for all of this. If you go, like, for example, yesterday I went on I think it was China Daily or Xinhua, Chinese state media website, and it says, it's a banner trying to promote like some articles about Ukraine. It says the Ukraine crisis, and it shows Putin and it shows Biden. What the fuck does that have to do with anything? Why don't you show something about Ukraine? And that's because Russia propaganda has been swallowed hook, line, and sinker by Chinese propaganda, who is amplifying that. And in my line of work, what I do is see the overlaps and things like that. And what I'm noticing is that Russian media and Chinese state media are using each other's journalists, spokespeople, white monkeys to promote the exact same message. And nobody is holding China accountable for that, only Russia.
No, it's absolutely true. Their media personalities are interviewing Russian media personalities and vice versa.
And vice
versa.
versa.
All their propaganda going back and forth. And you know what I'm reading here that just really, really burns me is that, China is stepping away from its support of Russia like they initially. No, they're not. No, they're not.
No.
They're not. I mean,
show me evidence.
No, yeah, our government is. This is. I'm so tired of our government's carrot mentality in this way that, like, hey, maybe if we say this, it'll give China some face, because face is very. Let's face it, it's very important in China, and allow them to do what we're encouraging them to do and step away from Russia. They're not going to do that because they're going to take Taiwan. And Russia is right behind them 100%, and so is Iran and everybody else that we trifle with. It's a mistake. We need to start, and I hope you agree, that we need to start playing clips of exactly what they're saying by day about the United States, Ukraine. And you know where they are playing it? You're playing it, Matt, on Laowhy86. No, I'm just like, look, this is not just a commercial, but like the detention camps that they're having for coronavirus. I've seen the most detail about those on your videos. With Ukraine and Russia, that's still a newer thing. And I know you're probably going to be adding more content. I'm going to be adding more content about that and what we're talking about. But the kind of content that you're adding and showing, like, when they want to keep people in a 10-story building away from each other, they just put Constantine razor wire in all the stairwells. So you can't go up and down the stairs. It's crazy, Carl. It's like that prison wire.
Welding the doors.
And electric fences as well.
Well, I guess the last resort is they'll weld people into their homes, and you show videos of that they're being welded in.
I wish that was a joke.
Yeah, no, it's not a joke. Yeah, you show that actually happening. So this is what's happening today. If we think that as this happens today, and this is what China will do, or Xi Jing Ping really will do to save face and not admit he was wrong about the no coronavirus policy, how far do you think they're willing to go to support Russia and Ukraine?
I mean, to this, I think the beginning was a little litmus test to see how they would react. And I think they dealt their whole hand. I think we now see that what I see from Chinese language media is that there are two forces in the world now, and it's East and West. And to them, East has nothing to do with Japan or Korea or anything like that. It's just Russia and China versus the rest of the world now. And Xi Jinping thought that he could get a lot more allies in the form of Pakistan and Iran and all these other states. But what he's realizing now is that really it's just Russia and China. And he's kind of really relying on the fact that people in China are going to see this as a great alliance, at least temporarily. and that they will completely solidify against the West. And I think it's actually working. I don't think you're going to see China pull out of complete support for Russia unless there is absolute economic destruction within China because of sanctions. And the problem I see with Western policy is that Russia gets hit with all of these things that cripple it and it de-incentivize it from doing these horrible things in Ukraine, but China doesn't get hit with anything.
No, as a matter of fact, they just get a better deal on gas from Russia.
Right. So why would China steer to a different path? Why would they change course when they can have their cake and eat it too?
If I'm looking at the Russian thinking, the way they operate over a 20-year span versus the way China does, because before the strategic, faux pas from Putin, he was a pretty good strategist, or tactician anyway, but he was a terrible long-term strategist. Right. China, I mean, a weak Russia is good for them because it just becomes, I think Russia becomes a vassal state to them.
I was going to use that same word.
Yeah, and 20, 30 years, maybe less, they share that huge border. They're not going to forget that Russia took land from them after World War II. They're gonna get Russia to give that back. They're not even gonna have to take it because they owe them so much money. And I think they'll be a vassal state. I guess you agree.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that.
That's tough because everybody knows that from Princess Bride, you never start a land war in Asia.
Right. Well said.
Inconceivable.
Yeah. This is bad on all accounts. Unless Putin does something like, I would even wonder if he drops a tactical nuke because he's getting his ass kicked so bad that if even that would cause China to walk away. I don't know. I feel like, I don't know. I feel like China's leaving everything on the table for themselves and getting Taiwan. So we'll have to see, but I think things are going that way. It's going to get, you're going to look at like World War I type trenches being dug in Donbass region of Eastern Ukraine. This is just getting started. And these propaganda accounts are just proliferating, not just the United States, but they're like fully proliferated through Africa and South America, specifically South America, because China really wants to fuck with us in our hemisphere. Have you seen that to be the case?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, I'm glad you brought that up. It was interesting when the Russia thing happened because I had to kind of dip my toes in the water of Russian propaganda, something I wasn't really well versed in. And I kind of understood how it worked because I have a lot of, I know a lot of people on the more conservative side of things, and they were sending me articles saying like, there's going to be no shooting war in Ukraine and Russia's actually being really nice to them and all this kind of stuff on these like patriot, conservative American Facebook, posts. And I'm like, what is this? I'm used to Chinese propaganda. It's very different. So what I noticed when I was actually speaking to Jordan Harbinger, my buddy.
Yeah, he's been on the show. He's great. Yeah,
great guy. He put me through to the Miburo group, which is Clint Watts. He does a lot of disinformation, misinformation stuff. And he did a whole study where they found where all of the Chinese propaganda influencers were going. And he mapped it out. So it was over like 50 countries and languages, right? So what a lot of them was South America, right? South America, Central America. The idea being that if China can gain influence over the Spanish-speaking world, they can mitigate American influence and then kind of be the forefront power in those areas through infrastructure projects or really just bribing despotic dictators. Let's be honest.
Belt and Road projects, which will be onerous loans that they will default on, and then China ends up with a deep water port that is of military use to them in South America.
And we're paying for it.
Absolutely correct. And we've already seen that starting to happen.
Look, Jordan does a great job. I think that Clint Watts episode is going to be great. I'll be looking for that too, but I think you're right. Like what you pointed out in your show is they don't just have these social media influencers on there with Chinese subtitles. They speak the language. No. So they're endeared to the population.
Hebrew, Spanish, German.
Right. Whatever it is, they'll learn it. And it's state media.
That's right.
Keep up the great work. What can we do as average citizens? I mean,
Thanks.
I'm doing what I'm doing, and my story is what it is. I think my listeners know it. But from your perspective, what can the average person do to help get the information out there?
I think that people need to really appeal to their social media choice of site of choice and make sure that they're labeling state media as such. You can send emails, you can report things, but also I think more importantly, if you're in the US, you need to write to your congressman and talk to the people that are actually in political power and reach out and use the elements of democracy at your disposal, because only by spreading information can you really, get these people's ears to perk up and realize that a lot of the educational institutions, a lot of the donations, a lot of the influence is coming directly from the Chinese government without you knowing it. So looking into those institutions, looking into the Confucius Institutes or the Cultural Exchange Institutes, stuff that has very non-nefarious sounding ties. I mean, just for example, a buddy of mine, Matthias Daly, he was in the studying Chinese medicine in Beijing, and he found out that the Chinese medicine institutions in America, especially the educational institutions, are co-opted by the Chinese government. So stuff that sounds very innocuous or culturally related and stuff oftentimes has ties to the Chinese government. So making sure that you're educated on that and making sure people in power know that as well.
Yeah. Well, that sounds great. Where can do any last words to add? And if not, tell us where we can. Before
my death.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, look, it's you or me, buddy, and my money's on you.
I know. I got you. Yeah, definitely. What I'm trying to get people to go out there and watch is my live show. So it's called ADV as an adventure, ADV Podcasts. It's on YouTube. It's a live show that SerpentZA and I do every Friday, and it's all about the current events. The stuff I do on my channel, Laowhy86 and SerpentZA, that's more like curated stuff that we've been studying for a long period of time. The live show is just like really what's happening on the ground from people in China.
Well, okay. So I guess you're not doing it from China or from people in China.
No, but we have people in China, obviously.
So they're really filming. They're getting video.
It's for
out?
English speakers. Yeah. And yeah.
Wow. That's great. I'm going to watch that. So they're getting video out in kind of real time for you. Everybody listening needs to know they're
yeah. I mean, we have sources, people that live there, and
they're risking their lives. I just want people to know that. I mean, this is
no joke.
100%.
This is a big deal, right? So we'll check it out. It's live on Fridays, and then you can replay it after that. It's cool. It's a live show. Somebody could show up naked. You never know.
Milk a horse.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So we'll tune in for that. You've been a great guest. I appreciate what you're doing, and we'll check you out on Fridays. We'll check you out at Laowhy86. We'll check you out, your buddy out, SerpentZA, at his channel, which was great. I watched one of his things today as well. It was great. Australian dude. Very cool.
Great stuff. South African.
Same thing.
Absolutely.
There you go. All right. Thanks for having us on. If you enjoyed the show, please give us a retweet or a like. If you didn't enjoy the show, remember, I don't care.